welcome to another episode of Who Gives a Hoot? In person.
You can point in the right directions this time as opposed to
That's John. That's Braedon.
fucking set myself up.
Kyle's up there somewhere.
Yeah. Kyle.
Whoa. Kyle is fine.
Yeah, so we've had a playoff match. And I think we did okay.
Won a playoff match.
The first time we won a playoff match since
What did we win it by?
Well, by one.
Yes. No, it was a frustrating ref match.
I didn't see it as much like that as you did. I thought, well, especially in the first half. The first half was very...
Well, you were sitting on berm the entire time.
I was, but it seemed like most of the fouls that were called in the first half were very much just in, very basic midfield fouls. Where the ref's basically going to say, these are the kind of fouls I'm going to call. Like, I think the other team deserves the ball now, so this is how I'm going to get it to them.
Issue I had in the first half was what he was carding for. Because there were cards awarded in the first half that were almost equivalent to a foul that only drew a foul call.
I agree with that. I don't think it should have been as card heavy as it was. But I do agree with JR. I feel like it was okay as it was. And I don't feel like
it didn't affect us too terribly, but
Luka got our only card in the first half.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Luka was the only one.
But when you give a defender a card in the first half for something that, in my opinion, was not cardable, and then Terzagi's continued embellishment throughout the entirety of the match.
That's
Terzaghi.
That's a whole other story.
But
we're not getting to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we had probably the best counterattacking goal I think I've ever seen. Lagos, who was being tugged, I assure it the entire time, managed to stay up and puts that pass off to Zico.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just beautiful. How do we feel just generally with the way the team played, coming off of a tragedy within the team environment, slightly rotated roster because of that, with Meshach's horrible accident? Like, the guys came in honestly a very rough mental state and delivered a fantastic performance. But now that they've had a little bit more time to process and everything through that game, they get a win out there. Do you think we see a different team, a potentially more rotated lineup, just based on where the guys are at mentally going into this? There's been more time to kind of prepare, react to the overall situation, more time to train and work a different style that might cause a little bit more rotation.
So hats off to the coaching staff for getting game plan together and keeping the guys as focused as you could be after a situation like this and with a week like this. You could tell how much coaching played into it, because the first 20, 25 minutes of the game looked very different than the rest of the first half.
Yeah.
And I was, telling people on the burn, they were very prepared early on. That's a sign of good coaching. Watch them to be good in the first 15 minutes. I think if we get a goal in the first 15 minutes of the second half, we'll be fine. And sure enough, that's when we got the goal.
Okay.
So I think the coaches did a good job of, doing what they had to do to get the players to, regroup, to focus, to, this was the game plan in the first half. This is what we did well, and this is what we need to continue to do well as we get back out there to start the second half.
Yeah.
And hopefully that can only get easier as we have had another week to process this and get ready for another game.
Yeah, and I mean, just the way the community came out in support of the team and of Meshach Like hearing somebody it was their first time ever going to a game showed up because they lived 12 houses down from him. Like that sort of level of community support is something the team I think has been missing year over year. And it's unfortunate that there's a tragedy that really has brought this community together. But I think having such a animated crowd driving the players, that the coaching staff that's putting in all of that effort to get the guys hyped to go out there play their all, but just that combination of everything, you know, the chanting was probably the best I've heard all season, except for the 3,000 children. Uh, you know, definitely a deeper chanting than the 3,000 children. We weren't quite hitting soprano levels, but it was a great environment. The weather held out very well on what looked like it could have been a very messy day, which we may end up getting this Saturday.
Yeah, I think we might have traded in good luck for that last game for bad luck this week.
I mean, forecasting right now is calling for it to stop before the game, so just bring a towel for your seats or grippers and cleats for the berm.
Speaking of that, so the goalkeeper spot was definitely absolutely destroyed, at least on the berm end, and it was just simply because of the amount of rain we had gotten in the previous days on that grass, I'm sure.
You and I saw what it looked like 2 hours before we walked in for warm-ups.
Yeah.
And it did not look like that at all.
No, so yeah.
Shocked to see how that looked.
So I've been out near the stadium a couple nights this week, and they've had the lights on late.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they're doing a full pitch rotation, some patching, hopefully not sand, although we did perform very well against Greenville in November with a mostly sand pitch.
That was only for the final that season too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They did that between Tucson and Greenville, which is just mind-boggling. But
it was the only way to fill patches.
No. That was a full field flip. They replaced all the turf between Tucson and Greenville that year.
Yeah.
Everything outfield, baseball included. That was entirely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's Belt Week.
Yes, it is.
Speaking of it.
So we're facing our oldest rivals in the league, debatably our only rivals in the league, and I think it's probably our best chance to move forward.
We match up well against Greenville. It's hard to explain why.
Yeah.
I mean, so looking at the previous, like under Dom specifically, besides the 3-3 crazy game that we had against Greenville last year.
That's the one where we blew the 2-goal lead?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was the one where we blew the 2-goal lead. We have not lost or drawn to Greenville since then. We've gotten the belt back. We've had a 3-game winning streak at this point. Whether it be we won 3-1 like we did last time, or we won 1-0 away, which is what we did for both of the, or at least by 1 goal, sorry, because the one before that. I think just the way we play against them, regardless of how we match up, whether it's with a more defensive or more of a open play style at this point, I feel like it's pretty good. My only thing is that against Knoxville, like they did not, like they won, they handily won, whatnot. I still think Knoxville was a better team that day, and I was still half asleep because I was taking a nap that time. But it looked afterwards, whatnot.
Must be nice.
Well, you know the saying in football, it's that defense travels.
Yeah.
And if you're a team that typically plays in low-scoring games, that translates to the playoffs in soccer, I think. Which, you know, we're a little more similar to Greenville than they are to Knoxville.
Yeah.
You know, Knoxville, I think they barely averaged 2 goals total per game in all the matches they played in the league. So I think we're closer to Greenville style than Greenville is to Knoxville.
Yeah.
In Knoxville style, you could say it carried over. I know it was a 2-1 game, but it's 2 pens. I mean,
Yeah,
can't really say that's a barn burner.
Yeah, I generally thought Knoxville was going to pull it off against Greenville simply because they had only lost once in their last 17 games against us. And I felt like they were the team to at least, if they're going to advance at any time, it's going to be any round because they're the best team defensively in the league. It just wasn't their day that day, and I definitely don't feel like Greenville has that ability against near peer or better teams sometimes because I feel like the 5-1 win against Tormenta on the final match day was more of an aberration than.
There's a lot to consider with that result.
Yeah.
That aren't all related to Greenville.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, it's Liam McKinnon and it's decent Greenville side. Like it's not like they can't score. It's not like they don't have a great team as it is.
I mean, Greenville has taken the second half of the season and really solidified themselves.
Yeah.
They were struggling in the first half. There were questions of, would they make it very far in any of the competitions they were in? Which this being a weird year of 3 competitions for everybody, or almost everybody.
Yeah.
And there is that continued feeling they have enough players that have been there long enough that it is a big game. We have guys who've been with us for a couple seasons, one for the entirety of it, and like they know what it means to the fans. I think the players on both sides have picked up what it really means. Like there is a real rivalry feeling, especially when you get to the postseason, because they wear an unearned star.
On our end, I think we can make up for it for 2 reasons. One, I think it's very evident, very obvious that the players really, really have a bad taste in their mouth with how last year ended. With the streak that they had to end the season and then putting 30 shots in a playoff game and not advancing. I think that really left a sour taste in their mouth coming to this year. And second is the players that were new to the team and new to the rivalry. Last game we played against Greenville was they really gutted out a win. It was 1-0. It was on the road. It was very foul heavy. It was very heavy-footed in the defensive midfield. Braedon Knapp played an extraordinary game out of position. It's everything about that game. It seemed like the team took a step forward after that game. I think they struggled and they had a couple of bad results right after that game just because of how exhausting it seemed like it was to get that result. But then I think they banded together and after they got through that rough patch, have really been humming.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the big things of our league with as congested a schedule as it can be. We were how many games in hand through most of the season?
2 or 3. It felt like for a while.
Yeah. And then you make them up quick. And, you have some really tough games in there, and either make or break. And we, not by the skin of our teeth, won the league. I think very, our goal differential is fantastic. Points wise, pretty solid. And just the camaraderie on the pitch. There wasn't a single time where you put in a rotated roster that they, to me, looked like they didn't belong on the pitch together. And that's something I've noticed in the past where you've got guys you're trying to develop that could be with us for 2 seasons. First season, they get subbed on and they just look out of place. Bronick, for instance, is like one of those players that traditionally would be in that situation, and he's come on and made a huge impact, and now he's he is officially signed as a professional player.
Yes, that's new. I will say, especially I loved the subs this last match, specifically with Misael and Bronick coming on at the same time. Because not only did they just want to be offensive, but they participated defensively.
With a 1-goal lead, too. That was a little wild.
I don't think as wild as we think it is, because Richmond is trying to push against us. They haven't really that entire day. and they're expecting us to bunker down. They're gonna not expect the pressure, and you have two fresh strikers up there that can press like they do, and they can run for as fast as they can. I mean, I'm surprised we didn't get that second goal. Looking at those couple times with those chances.
Now that you say that, interesting then that we didn't bring SDS on because he's more of a forward that can play with his back to the goal too.
Mm-hmm.
And if your idea is to waste a little bit of time, that's
I
kind of
think
direction
the
you go.
match was too physical.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It was a very physical match. Richmond has played very physically against us every time this season. Putting Steven out there would have been a liability if we're attempting to make a deep run.
I hope him not coming on means that he's fresher for Greenville, because if that's the case, then kudos to the coaching staff on that call. Hopefully it pays dividends.
Yeah. And honestly, Steven getting a chance later in the playoffs, being out there in his retirement run, it's a better storyline.
Yeah.
You're trying to win a league. Let's toss storylines aside.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't own a team.
Storyline wise.
One of the reasons, yes.
I mean, if we want to go storyline wise, do we want to talk about Spokane upsetting NoCo? Like,
Well,
That's the anti-story.
yeah.
That's kind of like
But Eamon got Coach of the Month.
that's the curse was already set in. We just didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
that's kind of like if Iceland drubbing Team USA and Mighty Ducks 2, and then drubbing them again in the medal round.
Right.
Yeah. Now, all eyes are going to be on Greenville this coming weekend, because regardless of the team that makes it through, they're two perennial powerhouse teams. Like, there's not a team that the others would like to face. And I think they would rather play on football lines than a baseball stadium.
I think we all would rather at this point. Maybe, I don't know. I don't mind it, but I'm used to it at this point. So
It'll be interesting to see how the pitch looks after this weekend. If temperatures drop, there's not a chance to really get the turf to stick. If it stays this temperature where it's been, highs in the 60s, you can get a little bit of root growth in there.
Everything else on the west side of the pitch looked fine. I'm surprised that everything there looked good, but just that area in the six on the east side,
I think that was just because of the rain.
yeah,
Because that's an area that has terrible drainage. You're getting everything coming off the berm.
Which
so.
I wonder if they don't practice on that side on Friday then, because that's when we might start seeing some rain again. So.
yeah.
Lineup thoughts? I know we've already talked a little bit about wanting to see Dos Santos out there.
Strongest lineup every time. That's all you got to do.
But who is our strongest lineup right
Oh
now?
god.
The one thing I was surprised to see was Schneider starting over Nat,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think it was a very good choice.
I think it makes more sense because Nat's a little more versatile when you bring him in off the bench.
Yeah.
A lot like.
Nap's going to create an immediate impact when he comes out there. Schneider, in that defensive role, I think did very, very well. Opened up the pitch in a lot of ways that I wouldn't necessarily see Nap doing from the get-go.
And so that meant that the other main difference was that Ostrom was playing basically as a center back as opposed to where he's used to playing at left wing back, which is very. It worked. He's very undersized there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that for a full season.
Right.
But he's been great since he started.
He's
I'm
fast.
not going to question anywhere he's playing out there. Just go get him.
Yeah.
I will say though, with Ostrom being in center back, I don't feel like we were able to make as deep of runs as we do on the wings as we usually do. At least not on his side.
Who would you put in center back instead?
I mean, at this point, I would say let's.
Marco not being on the bench was a surprise,
Yeah.
given that he played against Figo.
Yeah.
So
I'm hoping he's back.
So I don't know if that was re-aggravating an injury or if he was too emotional too emotionally affected to not play because Dom basically gave guys, I think, a decision on whether or not they wanted to.
Yeah, that was very much it. If Marco wants to play, I would want Luca, Blake, and Marco to be the 3 center backs we have, so that Charlie's freed up. I feel like that's just a very good lineup we've been putting out day in, day out throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, those 3 at center back, I mean, we've been playing the 3 in the back pretty much the entirety of the season. I think we've switched it up twice, and those results were.
It's basically been the 3. It's basically been the 3 of them and Mishak. Basically,
Yeah.
when it comes to league play and Jaeger Cup, that's been the rotation at center back.
Yeah.
Midfield, they got to have Pedro out there.
Of course.
That's where it gets a little bit. Like Gallardo had a hell of a game.
Yeah, but he played more.
He played more up top, but
No, he would have been basically playing in Dion's spot.
he seemed far more forward than that.
Check.
Although he did pull his shorts went from very high in the first half to lower in the second. So
grinded that.
I mean, I got a little worried. He pulls him up higher when he's cocky.
I mean, besides Pedro, I mean, if you put anybody else in there, I'd say you're pretty good. As long as you're playing to their strengths, or at least trying to do that.
You can't have him and Lagos play too close to each other.
No, that is
they
definitely...
both need space.
Yes.
Pedro more so because he can facilitate. Lagos more so because you want to do as much as you can to avoid him being double teamed.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that a couple times where they kind of bunch together a bit too much, whether it was this game or it was in previous games. But like if Pedro is definitely more centrally, more the midfield role that he actually is, and have Lagos more on the wing, I think we're fine.
I think we move the ball better when. Pedro's allowed to kind of, on average, position himself a little bit more forward.
Yeah.
Whenever he's almost not like as a 6, but
No.
having to almost position himself as one to move the ball around when they press on him.
Yeah.
In that position of the field, he can turn the ball over. So I think keeping the players spread out wide in the midfield with him sort of more middle as opposed to back plays better, which a little hard to do at Werner, but I
mean,
they're playing good
use
enough.
the full field.
Yeah, and width-wise especially. That's how you counter that.
I mean, do we think we see Bronick start?
I think
Misa start?
I still like them as the subs. I feel like this last game kind of solidified the fact that regardless of what the situation is, whether we're up or down, whatnot, I feel like they can at least be good enough to bring fresh legs on offense if we want to put it there.
I think Bronick subbing on as early as he did in this last game tells you that he probably trained well last week, and Dom is willing to put guys out there that train well.
Yeah.
But like if Steven's healthy, I want him out there. I'm okay with Aron there as well as main striker if that's not the
Aron was
choice there.
Fantastic.
If Steven can't start, I have no problem with Aron playing center forward by himself, putting those attacking wings very far wide so that they all have space with one another, especially if Joe's on one of those sides to throw the ball.
Especially with Steven and Aron are not the same player. They're not playing the same style. Aron is definitely more of the poacher's goal if he can find one. I feel like we can probably find a bit more with that with Greenville.
He has more success if he can get the ball closer to like just barely in that attacking area of the midfield as opposed to further into the 18. Yeah. If he's like get the pass and he's like moving forward as he gets it, he's a lot more effective.
But he's probably our second best striker, though it may not be show that on our goals tally, but at least in the position that he is and how he uses it, I'd say is pretty good for that.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there.
Yeah.
Score predictions.
I'm going to say 2-1.
All right.
I'll say 2-0 with the second one coming very late. Kind of 2-0.
All right. We had first team announced for league. only one Union Omaha player on there.
One Union Omaha player on the first and second team combined is very interesting.
I believe a former general manager of Union Omaha had some
I saw that.
choice words about it.
A lot of candle for that.
There were other choice words on other social media talking about how the IQ on that take was very low. I don't think it was a bad take by any means. I definitely feel like if we could fill up any roster with all teams, we probably have it right now.
I think as far as where the first and second team all league showed, I think it speaks very highly to how much of a complete unit Union Omaha has been. Like, we don't have the one guy for the most part. I mean, Pedro had some great goals, some great assists throughout the season, but we aren't reliant on one player.
No. Taking a look at any of our most prolific goal scorers throughout the season, we have 2 10-goal scorers. We have multiple more than 5.
Yeah.
And it's not just midfielders or offense. We have multiple goal scorers from defensive.
Has everybody in the defense scored now?
So I know Blake.
This year?
Yeah.
Blake and Luca.
And Marco.
Marco, he had one this year. Dion technically had his little deflection own goal as well.
Luca got his.
Yeah, Luca got his.
So it's not like 2022 where it seemed like all the injuries piled up at the end of the season, but we did kind of have a season where
there were a lot of injuries.
We had different iterations of lineups as the season went on because
Yeah.
of guys either showing up later in training camp before the season started. We had PC get hurt, then come back, then retire. We had Steven get hurt. We had Dion get hurt. We had Marco get hurt.
Then you had Bawa signed mid-season to fill in.
And I think combining this with the league really is focusing on separating Jägermeister Cup play from league play when it comes to stats and when it comes to
not yellow cards or red cards, but
yeah, the accepted discipline for whatever reason. But it almost seems like they're telling people, okay, you can't look at Jaeger Cup games for this. Nope, not at all. They don't count. Even saying that, I still think Luca should have made second team at first.
I agree there.
Very below the order categorization right there for what you should.
He had one big screw up that led to a goal during the season. Other than that, he's been one of the best defenders against set pieces in the league this year. His clearance numbers, I don't get it.
For the other all-league team, as voted on by the players, Luca still didn't make it, but we did have a defender on there. Pedro also made it, but you had Dion, and granted, Dion hasn't featured of late, but I think that is very telling that the rest of the players in the league thought Dion was one of the best defenders out there, and I'd be hard pressed to argue with that.
And they only need one team, right?
They only do one team.
Yeah.
And between Dion and Pedro on the player voted team of the year, I think those two representing us as a whole in that level is exactly who I would have put on there.
And I will definitely put that out there for specifically league chosen squads, whatever. It definitely tells you the depth of what other teams have, the fact that they have players that sit out in whatever position they're at to actually get on that above any of our players who are definitely a cohesive unit. And sometimes it's very hard to pick out how good is this guy, whatnot, especially if you're just looking at raw stats, whether it be assists or goals.
Yeah, a 3-4-3, you're gonna pick outside backs that score goals and put them in the back three. I mean, we can't cry over that. Donnie made this team twice playing that very position.
But that is always one of the challenges except for the goalkeeping position, is it typically ends up with people who've scored goals. And had offensive contributions, not so much the defensive contributions. Because I think it looked very different if you included and ranked higher what the defensive contributions were.
Maybe we'll do that when we possibly choose our Union Omaha All 11 now that we're 5 seasons in?
Off-season stuff.
Yeah.
I have some off-season plans I want to go through for dumb podcast ideas. We want to do that, but
We only have brilliant podcast ideas. We've never had a dumb podcast idea.
fine, drunk
Except for
ideas.
this whole
Drunk
thing.
ideas.
The
drunk
dumb
ideas.
podcast ideas we do drunk and then become brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're nearing the end of the season. Potentially have another game after this. As always, there will be content in the off season. Right now, Union Omaha has a GoFundMe for Meshach that is still available to donate to. Proceeds of that go directly to Meshach's family and medical bills, taking care of the children. I believe there's also fundraisers happening at the game.
Yes.
The significant others for the players are going to do an auction for a lot of very nice memorabilia. Braedon, I think you might have the list.
So I think right off the top of my head, so we have 2 New Mexico United jerseys, one with Jerome printing, one with a Union Omaha legend, Greg Hurst. We will be getting a Duncan McGuire shirts as well, and that will be signed later with a meeting with him itself. We have some print-offs of players that will be signed by them, by Catherine Rosca, whatnot. And I'm thinking, is there anything else I might have missed?
We're going to have some Casey Calder
Yep.
donating some stuff. We have, there's going to be, I think, gift certificates from other places in the area. St. Louis City are potentially sending something.
Yes.
We said Sounders team ball.
Yep.
If you like soccer memorabilia, there's something there for you.
I believe they'll have tables set up inside where you can place your bid once you enter the stadium. Please bid what you can.
Yep. It's all going to a great cause. Outside of support for Meshach and his family, there is also Union Omaha asking for donations to help bring nonprofit groups to the game on Saturday. Links are on their social media. You get a chance, go there. If you've got something for either cause, feel free to contribute. Great way to help out the community in many different ways.
Yeah.
Tailgate wise, I believe Parliament is you guys doing barbecue?
Yeah.
We are in front of Gate 2, weather permitting.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's friendly enough to us to where we can just set a couple tents up and keep people a little dry and.
Yeah.
Worth noting, the Christmas lights are in full display at the park. There are only 2 lots open for general parking there. There's still, you can park at the school or park around the park. But parking did get very packed with a fairly slim crowd for the quarterfinal. So get there early. Feel free to join in with a tailgate. You know, there are a number out there. And just show off for the team.
Yep.
All right, guys. One last question. Who gives a hoot?
We do!